Now, when we talk about forgiveness, we're not talking about condoning someone's actions that have done someone wrong, harmed somebody, abused somebody, oppressed somebody, stolen from somebody, gossiped about somebody. We're not talking about condoning a negative act. No, forgiveness is not that. I like to teach that all forgiveness is really self-forgiveness. What does that mean? That means that the rancor, the resentment, the animosity, the so-called negative emotional content that flows through an individual, if they're living in the vibration of unforgiveness, that's very harmful to the person who's not forgiving. Peace and riches blessings. I am Michael B. Beckwith, the host of Take Back Your Mind. Peace and riches blessings. As you know, I am Michael B. Beckwith, the founder and the spiritual director of the Agape International Spiritual Center. But today, I am your host of Take Back Your Mind podcast. Obviously, I love that terminology, Take Back Your Mind, because we have a mind. We're not our mind, but we have to mind the mind. And that is, the mind has been so programmed with thoughts, perceptions, beliefs, opinions, points of view, positionalities that we had nothing to do with. Things that we were raised with, things that we're bombarded with by societal and governmental propaganda, religiosity, and more. And so as one begins to embark or continues to embark on awakening spiritually or growing spiritually, one takes back their mind. They begin to be aware that if the mind is going to be programmed, because the mind is a set of programs, then we must be the operator of that which is programming. Thus, I say, we're here to take back our mind so that things don't just fall in and become a part of our subconscious, become a part of our unconscious belief system, that ultimately becomes a part of our experience or even symptoms of the body temple. So today, let's take back our mind. I thought it was important for us to have a little dialogue about forgiveness. Forgiveness is an extremely important dimension of one's spiritual practice. As you look at all true religions with heart, you'll always bump into three particular things, at least. You'll bump into some form of prayer where you're connecting with the presence. You'll bump into some level of introspection, whether you call that meditation or self-reflection. You'll bump into forgiveness. And of course, compassion, generosity, goodwill. But forgiveness is intricately involved in pretty much every path with heart. It's extremely important. Now, when we talk about forgiveness, we're not talking about condoning someone's actions that have done someone wrong, harmed somebody, abused somebody, oppressed somebody, stolen from somebody, gossiped about somebody. We're not talking about condoning a negative act. No, forgiveness is not that. I like to teach that all forgiveness is really self-forgiveness. What does that mean? That means that the rancor, the resentment, the animosity, the so-called negative emotional content that flows through an individual, if they're living in the vibration of unforgiveness, that's very harmful to the person who's not forgiving. Saying nothing of the person who's done the so-called evil deed. So all forgiveness at bottom is when an individual decides They're going to cut the emotional cord with the individual that has done something out of alignment, out of integrity, and begin to free one from those particular thoughts that become emotions, that become symptoms, that become experiences. That's why I say all forgiveness is really self-forgiveness. One of the other things that I've taught over the years is a lack of forgiveness is a high form of self-abuse. We're actually abusing ourselves. If you think of a particular individual that's gossiped about you, stole something from you, said something about you negatively, or just did something downright mean to you, and whenever that name comes up or someone mentions them or you think about them, and you've heard the phrase, your blood starts to curdle, or your blood pressure is raised, or you have shortness of breath, or you become unclear mentally and emotionally, that's self-abuse. You've actually given the power of your peace of mind to someone else. And so self-abuse has clinical responses in terms of the body temple, mental and emotional. We want to come into a way of forgiveness by which it becomes a way of our living, a way of life, not just one and done. If you look through the course of your day, you may know that there may be people in your life that kind of annoy you. You know, it's not personal. Oftentimes when we really step back and see our relationships to other people, and we say, oh, that person bothers me, that person annoys me, I hate it when they do such and so, or when they do this, or when they do that. If you step back far enough, you'll see that they're not really doing that to you. That's just where they are in their life at that particular time, with that particular habit, whatever that habit is that annoys you. They're not just doing that annoying habit to you. They're not just gossiping when you're around. They're not just playing the victim when you're around, or whatever it is. That's just kind of where they are. So you learn how to step back for a moment and not take what other people are doing or saying personally. That's just what they're doing or saying. And they would be doing, for the most part, they would be doing or saying whatever it is that they're doing or saying, whether you were in the room or not. So we don't take it personal. So a way of coming into the dynamic of forgiveness as a way of life is every day, the same way that you take a shower or a bath, you brush your teeth. Hopefully you may have you have some moments of contemplation, meditation, moments of inspiration, moments of prayer. You devote a particular period of time, and it's really helpful to do this before you go to bed at night. You just scan your day, and you just see whether any petty annoyances. It may even be people you don't even know. Maybe the person that cut you off in traffic, the person that didn't let you in when you had your blinker on, and they just sped up so you couldn't get in. That's always makes me laugh when people do that. It's like, we're not racing. We're probably going to two different destinations, so we're not going to be fighting for a parking space. But people, people are people. They're human. They're imperfect humans hopefully seeking to unfold. But you scan your day and you see if there's any petty annoyances or anything that really got on your nerves, and you release it. You take some breaths and you forgive. And I'll go into a forgiveness process in a minute. You forgive and you release. So you're not going to sleep with that on your mind and your heart. If that builds up, again, it is a form of self-abuse. You're hurting yourself. You're taking in thought forms of negativity. Now, a thought form is a unit of mental energy that today can now be measured through brainwave technology. I can remember a number of years ago when I was teaching this, a lot of the technology that exists today didn't exist 30, 40 years ago. But today, not only can they measure your blood pressure, which they could 30, 40 years ago, but they can actually measure the thought frequencies. So a thought is a unit of mental energy that does what? transmutes itself. It transmutes itself into speech, behavior, emotions, actions. It transmutes itself into symptoms of the body temple. It transmutes itself into perceptions of life. And those perceptions then transmute themselves into experiences that we have. So this is why I've said over the years, I did a PBS special around it, you are the answer. The answer of everything lies within you. And so, as I was saying, if in fact you just take things in all the time and you ultimately carry a kind of a victim badge on yourself, they did this to me, they said that about me, it's not fair, they're doing this, and you have a level of unforgiveness around that activity, those thought forms will transmute themselves some way, somehow, into chemicals in your body. If they become chronic, they can become conditions. If those conditions become chronic, those conditions can then become symptoms and the conditions of some kind of dis-ease of the temple. So forgiveness is important to our mental, emotional, psychological, and physical health. You do yourself good when you forgive, you see. And you do yourself good if you forgive on a regular basis. Make that a part of your practice. Something goes down, when you go to bed at night, you seek to release it. Don't want to carry it on. Because one of the things that is called heavy lifting, carrying a grudge is heavy lifting. If you're carrying a grudge, that's heavy. You're actually carrying an energy that's heavy on you. And the ego is saying, I'm right. Your soul wants to say, I'm free. But your ego is carrying a grudge. I'm right. They did this, or they should have did this. You see. So the ego wants to be right. Your soul wants to be free. So the art and science of forgiveness allows you to be free. After a while, you develop a spaciousness within yourself where not only is there a greater sense of joy, but you stop taking things personally, and you'll even find this comes up. Certain things won't bother you anymore. That which used to annoy you and bother you, what people did or didn't do, it's not your business. Now, if somebody's stepping on your toe, or somebody's actually doing some kind of physical or emotional abuse, yeah, you may have to shift the behavior of the situation. But mostly, you can live a life kind of unbothered about what other people are doing or saying because it has nothing to do with you. It has something to do with them and their connection with their soul and with the presence of God within their own life. So this leads back to forgiveness is not condoning somebody, condoning an action of somebody who's done something negative. We're not condoning it. We're not saying it's all right. We're saying we are not going to participate in the emotional tumult within us that's going to cause us harm. And then we can operate from a higher level of choice and take appropriate action if something is way out of bounds. Forgiveness is empowering to ourselves. And it is a practice. Now, what happens is, as it becomes intricately involved as a part of our spiritual practice, it assists us in our own spiritual growth, development, and unfoldment. What begins to emerge from us is empathy and compassion. Empathy is actually, you can actually know how another person is feeling. And then compassion is a high form of love that understands the lack of understanding. That's how I define compassion. You can actually see, have empathy for an individual and feel their suffering, feel their hurt, feel their woundedness. You don't take it on. That's sympathy. Sympathy, you actually take it on. You actually get into the other person's feeling. Empathy is you feel it, but you're not taking it on. And compassion, you're really not taking it on. But you start to have a greater understanding of what appears to be lack of understanding, based on certain actions that are not in integrity or not in alignment with peace and love and harmony and generosity and the like. If you develop a really good dynamic of practicing the art and science of forgiveness, your ego will lose the stranglehold on your awareness, and you won't be seeking to always be right about a circumstance or a condition or whatever it is you're perceiving. You'll be seeking more to be free so that you can live your life powerfully, confidently, successfully, regardless of what other people are saying or doing. I remember a number of years ago, pre the establishment of the Agape International Spiritual Center, and I was invited to guest speak at a spiritual center in Orange County, and I did. I was teaching at the university at the time of metaphysics, and the students there wanted me to come to their church, their community, their center, and speak because they didn't have a minister at the time. So I did. I spoke, and the congregation just really loved my presentation to the point where they invited me to speak again. I came back, I spoke again. And after a while, they actually wanted me to be the minister of this community. And I said, well, I don't really think it's my fit. I don't think so. I don't, but there was such an overwhelming response from them to at least put my hat in the ring. And I did. And again, the response was overwhelming when I spoke there. But there was a small group of people that were on what is called the selection committee that worked side by side with the board of trustees to would then select the proper candidates to turn it over to the board. Then the board would negotiate with the candidate. So they would never turn my name in. The congregation was really upset because I had like the highest ranking. And they began, this particular small group, not the entire group, but the small group, did not want an African American to be the spiritual teacher of this community. And they spread all kinds of rumors about me, that I never really graduated from the school, even though not only I graduated, I had the highest mark when I graduated in terms of the paper I wrote, in terms of the test I took. They began to just say all kinds of racial things about black people, the property value is going to go down. People are going to start parking their cars on the lawn if he becomes the minister out here. It was just wild. And it was a kind of a shock to me because this was a spiritual community and these people were attacking me. They didn't even know me. They were just attacking me. And I'll always remember that experience. I eventually just said, you know what? I don't think you guys need to get your stuff together here. I don't think this is my place. I pulled my name out of it. And it was interesting because a couple of my students were on the board of trustees there, and they were telling me what was being said about me. So I had like a firsthand pipeline as to the lies that were being said about me. Point being, that experience took me to such a deep level of forgiveness for these people that it changed my life. And I was living a forgiving life because I was a spiritual practitioner, I was a minister, et cetera, but my spiritual practice was already about forgiveness. But that particular experience took me to a very, very deep level of my own being. I had to go to a place within myself that I'd never gone to before and fell deeply, ultimately in love with these beings who were spreading rumors about me and saying all manner of things about my culture or my ethnicity. And it just created such a depth of freedom within me. And I remember that as I was attending what was called a ministerial convocation, I could hear one of the ministers speaking to the group of ministers. Before I arrived, I could hear them out the window. And this one minister, who was a pretty big wig in the movement at that time, was asking for prayer because a travesty was about to happen. He was saying the travesty was an African American was about to take over this church in Orange County. And it was like, I couldn't believe it. It was like, what? So I walked in and I sat right in front of him, and he stopped his speech about that. But again, both those things were happening at the same time, and it just took me to this deep place within myself. I was free. That allowed me to decide, you know what? I am never going to allow my destiny to be determined by human beings. I'm going to start my own spiritual community. I'm not going to go through putting myself in a position for somebody to decide whether I'm good enough. So I started my own community. I had a vision, and I followed it. And I came in very clean. And about 2 or 3 years later, as Agape was in Culver City, growing very rapidly, those people that were on that selection committee came to Agape and apologized to me. They came in, they saw me standing there, they started crying and just felt so embarrassed by what they had said and ultimately did. And I just smiled at them. I mean, I had no rancor in me. I said, oh, come on into the service. I just hugged them. I said, all is forgiven. But I meant it. I wasn't paying lip service to forgiveness. I wasn't doing what one should do. I had really forgiven them. And when I saw them in person, there was no blood pressures, no blood curdling. There was no, oh, those are those guys that did that. No, it was just like, hey, come on into Agape. Hey, here's a seat, And we hugged, and they cried and apologized. And that was the end of that. I've seen them over the years, and it's always been a very sweet connection. And you know what happened? They grew by my ability to forgive. They became different beings. Because it just made them self-reflect as to what they said and what they did. That's just a personal experience to show the depth of forgiveness, that all forgiveness is self-forgiveness. And when you really forgive, it takes you to the depth. And you know what just came in my awareness? The first talk I ever did at that spiritual community was about forgiveness. It just passed in my mind right now. I just remember. And I talked about Job. And I talked about how Job, in the book, in that particular scriptural reference of Job in the Bible, how Job was, of course, he had such maladies of the body temple, disease. He'd lost everything in the physical world in terms of his possessions. And his friends were saying, God has really given up on you. You should curse God. Now, in the Bible, of course, this is a parable. It's not like this is not something that really happened, because supposedly Satan or the devil and God are having a conversation, and the Satan is saying to God, Job will curse you if you allow these negative things to happen. And of course, ultimately Job didn't. So it was just a parable. But here's the deal that I talked on that particular Sunday, if I can remember. I modernized it. Job's in the hospital. He's suffering from cancer or AIDS. And his friends come in to comfort him. But instead of comforting him, they start asking him questions like, well, why do you think this is happening? What did you do to cause this, Job? You should curse God. And people do that today. Even in metaphysics, somebody will get sick or something will happen. They'll say, well, what were you thinking to cause that? They'll lose their compassion and ask very, what I call, questions that are asked by neophytes, And so Job, when he heard his friends asking him these questions, ultimately, he was a little upset at first because they didn't meet him at the level of his pain. They met him with a philosophy, with an ideology. What are you doing to cause this illness in your body? But the scripture goes on to say, Job was healed with the forgiveness of his friends. That when he went into forgiveness and just forgave them for not meeting him at his depth of pain, he became free. So even in that scriptural reference, Job was healed because he forgave. And then his body regenerated, prosperity came back, etc. It's interesting, I just passed in my awareness now that was my first talk there, and then I had to actually practice that when I was reviled because of the color of my skin. So forgiveness does not condone. Forgiveness is a practice of ultimately self-love and appreciation, because you're not abusing yourself any longer. And those thoughts, units of mental energy, become more coherent with love, compassion, empathy. And something that's on my mind a lot these days, deliberate kindness. You grow it to be a much more kind being. Why? Because you're showing kindness for yourself. Self-love and appreciation. When you forgive even yourself for the mistakes that you may have made in life, things you said that you wish you could take back, things you possibly could have said that you did not say, things you did, mistakes you made, you want to make sure that you don't condone yourself for things that you made life messy for someone. But ultimately, you do have to forgive yourself and revisit in your mind those particular areas so that you get to change. But my point is, you begin to fall in love with yourself. I don't mean from an egotistical point of view. But when there's self-forgiveness, with the awareness that we are all imperfect human beings that are unfolding to reveal the inner perfection that's within us, that which we have emerged from the presence of love and beauty and intelligence. And that presence is perfect, and that's in us. It's in our spiritual DNA. It's in our consciousness. But we are imperfect human beings that are growing to allow more of that which is perfect to unfold. So in the process of that happening, we're going to stumble. We're going to fall. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to say things that we wish we could take back. We're going to do things that we wish we could have taken back. It's called falling forward. You see, you're progressing, but you're falling forward. You're falling forward, you see. And so with the awareness that we're imperfect human beings, forever and ever unfolding, we give ourselves a break. We start to have a level of kindness about ourselves. And in so doing, here's another thing about the ego. The ego doesn't care whether you're beating yourself up or boasting. It doesn't care whether you say, I'm the worst person in the world, I'm a bad person, I shouldn't have done that when I was 16, when I was 24, yesterday, whatever, I'm terrible. Or whether you're saying, I'm better than everybody, I'm superior, whatever. The ego doesn't really care whether you're boasting or beating yourself up. It just wants to be center of attention. You're also like making a commitment with yourself that you're not going to do that anymore, whatever it is. You're not going to gossip. You're not going to talk about that person. You're not going to steal. Whatever the mistake was. When there's a depth of kindness there, then you'll discover that deliberate kindness will start to flow from you to others as well. You're only as kind to other people as you are to yourself. Now, you can put on airs and pretend to be kind. I'm talking about real kindness. There's a term that became popular over the years called random acts of kindness. I'd like to think deliberate acts of kindness. But that can only come about if you're kind with yourself. What does deliberate acts of kindness mean? We have things on our to-do list. We have things we want to accomplish. We have things that we have to complete at our particular assignments, our work assignments. But what if we put a deliberate act of kindness on our to-do list as well? Like, I'm going to go in today and I'm going to be kind to the coworkers. I'm going to bring in some healthy treats or something, or I'm going to, you make it up yourself. Think about certain people in your life that you don't owe them anything. They don't owe you anything. But you're just going to have a deliberate act of kindness. That is a direct extension of the depth of forgiveness that you have with yourself and the kindness that you have with yourself. Because when there's forgiveness and kindness, there's spaciousness. It's not cluttered. And when there's spaciousness, then the presence of love and beauty, generosity, compassion that's within you can now flow. And you feel so good when you're a vehicle of kindness, and you become a greater vehicle of kindness when in fact forgiveness becomes a part of your spiritual practice. Extremely important. Now you may be asking, how do I forgive? I'll hit at it from two angles. One, many of you have my book, Spiritual Liberation, which I have some forgiveness practices in there. And one of the forgiveness practices is you sit in your chair in the way I'm sitting here now. You have another chair in front of you. You imagine that the person you need to forgive is sitting in that chair. Now, this is work. This is not like, oh, I forgive Joe, and you go on about your day. This is actually doing a level of spiritual work where you're cleaning up the circuits of your own soul. So you imagine that individual is sitting in front of you, whoever it may be, and you kind of remember what they did or did not do. And you imagine they're sitting there, you look at them right in the eyes, and you say, what you did or did not do cannot and will not determine my destiny. My destiny is determined by me. I forgive you and set you free to live your destiny. I now cut the cord of the emotionality that we are entangled in right now. And you literally use your fingers and imagine that you're cutting an emotional cord. And you forgive them. And then you go to the next stage and you imagine and feel that something good is happening for them. That's advanced forgiveness. When you actually have an inner desire for your perpetrator, for something good to happen to them. But let me tell you something. We live in a return to sender universe. Whatever energy you send out, it returns to you. So just as self-forgiveness frees you, your willingness to allow an affirmative, positive energy to flow from you, that's going to come back to you. So again, it's kind of spiritually selfish to forgive and desire that something good happens for somebody that has done you in an indecent, negative way. You cut the cord and you set them free. And you do that until you actually have a feeling that you want good for them. Again, personal story. I went to a 7-day intense meditation retreat, and a lot of it was around forgiveness. And there was a particular being in my life a few years ago that said some lies and did some horrific things. And I did my forgiveness work. And however, when I was at this meditation retreat, they bubbled up again in my awareness, which meant I needed to do some more forgiveness work, which I did. I diligently went in, saw them, cut the cord, prayed for them, desired that good would happen. And an interesting thing happened. A couple of weeks ago, I'm not really good with time. It could have been a month ago. But in the dream state, they were in the dream state. They were in my dream. And it was the first time they were in my dream. And there was a level of joy and a level of harmony and good memories where they were concerned. Before, whenever they were in my dream, it never really felt good. I would forgive them, and then they would, in the dream state, they would move on. But this time was like, it felt really good that they were there. Now, I probably will never be connected with that individual again. I won't go to lunch with them. I won't go to, we're not going to be friends. But I could tell by the dream state, I had no negative energy about them. I really sincerely hope they're happy and are living their best life. You see, you begin to notice that. For me, it came in a dream. It showed me, wow, you really did good forgiveness work. You see. So advanced stages of forgiveness are when you actually have a desire that that person prospers. It seeps into your emotional feeling tone. It's not going to happen overnight. I mean, being real, it's not going to happen overnight. In the beginning, you can forgive, cut the cord, release the toxicity and the negativity and the rancor and the resentment of your own being. But eventually, it'll grow into your real desire that they prosper. And as I just said, forgiveness doesn't mean you're going to be best friends with the perpetrator. There is a story of forgiveness that I think brings a lot of this to bear. There was an individual who had been done wrong by somebody. The person had spread some vicious rumors and had found a way to steal some of their wealth and prosperity. And so as he was going to bed at night, he knew it was kind of burning him up inside. So he knew he needed to forgive. So he went into prayer and he asked for help. He said, it's so difficult for me to forgive this person. Please help me forgive them. So when he fell asleep, he was taken by an angel. And the angel began to teach him that the lack of forgiveness was harming his own body. That the thought forms were transmuting themselves into perceptions that was becoming agonizing for the body temple. So then he woke up and he became more involved to powerfully forgive this person because he knew he was harming himself. The next couple of days he realized it was still in him, it was still bothering him. Not as much as it was before, but it was still in him. So before he went to bed at night, he said, please help me to forgive. I really want to forgive. He fell asleep. Another angel comes to him. Angel lifts him out of the body temple and takes him and shows him the birth of the person that he needed to forgive, and showed him his timeline of him growing up as a young kid and going through school and adulthood and all the things that affected him psychologically, and his own wounds that were unhealed, and all the areas in this person's life that were unmended. And the man could see that what he did to him was not personal, that as the old saying goes, if he knew better, he would have done better. But he could not have done better because everything that had brought him to that moment made him that person, to lie and to steal. It was his unhealed area of life that was acting. And he was like, wow, it wasn't personal. He had no choice but to act the way that he did. He was in fear. He was mad. He was anxious. And he did me wrong. So he redoubled his efforts on forgiveness. A few days later, he still felt a little nagging something in his soul. Prayed before he went to sleep. As he fell asleep, another third angel came and took him out of the body temple. Took him to the beginning of where souls emerge from the infinite presence of God. And when he saw this man coming, emerging from the eternal, he gasped because he realized that that individual was him, that they were the same, that they emerged from the same source of all creation. That individual may have been born in another country, may have spoken another language, may have had a different religious point of view, but that person was him. And he woke up and he realized that one All forgiveness is self-forgiveness. That the mental and the vibration of thoughts that are not forgiven harm oneself. He became aware that the individual that did him wrong, so to speak, had no other choice, because that's who he thought he was in that particular moment. It was his unhealed consciousness that struck out. And thirdly, he saw that, wow, we both emerged from the same source. We are one and the same. And he finally broke free. And whenever he thought about that person, he smiled. That person took him to the depth of a greater awareness, and he became more kind to himself, more compassionate with himself, and then became more compassionate. Had a more compassionate, kind walk in the world. Not a random act of kindness, but he became a vessel of deliberate acts of kindness and prayers, particularly even for those people that did not like him or had a sense of a rivalry with him or competition, or would actively want to see him fail. But he became unbotherable. Forgiveness takes you to a space within yourself where you touch the core of your being and you can become unbotherable about other individuals' unconscious behavior or unconscious hurtful speech. I'm telling you, there's a power in forgiveness, and you become the recipient of that power. It changes your life. So if you really want to be empowered as a spiritual being having a human incarnation, you cannot bypass the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness, giving forth the affirmative, positive energy for a negative one. Two more things. For turning the other cheek. We've heard that dynamic before. Oftentimes people think that means if someone slaps you on the face, you're going to be so religious and spiritual that you're going to turn the other cheek and let them hit the other cheek. That's not what that means. Turning the other cheek metaphysically means if someone gives you negative energy, you give them positive energy in return. You give an individual positive. You're turning the other cheek. They're giving you negative energy. You give them positive energy. It does not mean in the moment that somebody's giving you negative energy, you're going to start doing kind things for them. It means in your own soul, you're going to stand in love. When you go home, when you pray, you're going to wish them well. You're turning the other cheek. Another great point about forgiveness is this. The debt that individuals accumulate in life is often a sign of unforgiveness. Metaphysically, when we're not forgiving, we actually think that other person or those other people owe us something. They owe us an apology. They owe us a moment of making amends. Even literally, if someone stole something from you, you figure they owe you something. But if you're walking around thinking someone owes you something, your message that you're broadcasting to the universal law is, I'm missing something. And if that becomes a chronic message, I'm missing something condenses itself as debt. So you end up having debt because of a lack of forgiveness and the thought that someone owes you something. That's powerful, isn't it? So you're actually putting yourself in debt because someone said something or stole something from you. No one owes you anything. And you have everything within your own soul. Forgiveness makes you spacious enough to catch the eternal broadcast of abundance and beauty and love harmonizing prosperity, total goodness. So you're not condensing, they owe me, into debt. Of course, we're not saying in the practical, linear world, if someone owes you something and there needs to be a legal recourse, I'm not advising you not to do a legal recourse. But I am saying to you, in your mind, don't walk around feeling emotionally that you're owed something. That's going to condense itself into debt. There's a way of practicing being in the world and not of it. I was working with an individual one time who had been arrested. I won't go all into the details of the case, but I gave him some technology to use. I told him to write down what he wanted to do with his life, write down his vision, because he was facing a lot of time in prison. So write it down. Then I want you to forgive and bless the police officers, the prosecuting staff, your defense attorneys, and the judge. And then come out of that legal world. Let them do their job. You're not interested in that. What are you interested in? Your destiny and the life you want to live. That's all I want you to focus on. So when he goes to court for the arraignment, the prosecutor steps up with his briefcase and had lost some very valuable paperwork that broke the chain of evidence. So the judge had no recourse but to set this individual free. And they had 30 days, I guess, to refile. The judge was livid. The judge had no recourse. Anyway, he goes off, he flies somewhere else to Hawaii and began his life. Never was refiled. Why? He didn't get involved in things that were happening legally. He went into another world. He went into the world of his destiny and forgave everybody and allowed them to be who they were. In the process of forgiveness, it's the same thing. You are being lovingly kind with yourself. You're turning the other cheek, meaning you're spreading positive energy. But you're not looking for, I'm talking about in your soul, bad things to happen to that person. You're going on your life. Karma and the law of cause and effect and the legal system, if that's in play, that'll take care of whatever. That's not your job. So even if you're in a legal battle, you have hands off enough so that the attorneys handle it. Where are you living? In forgiveness and freedom. And anything you think you lost, you'll get back. Anything you think you lost will come back. Because you're living in the higher frequency, in the higher atmosphere. So as I close, just be aware that forgiveness is not this sweet, nice. You're not trying to be nice. Matter of fact, kindness doesn't even mean being nice. Kindness is a very powerful energy of assisting someone and becoming an answer to a need that they have. It's way beyond being nice. A person can be nice and it be a pretense. Kindness is power. So when you come into forgiveness, that's powerful. You're becoming a powerful being, you see. And you want to bring this into your way of living. Don't go to sleep at night holding grudges or resentments. It's not good for your soul. It's not good for you. I want you to be free and powerful. Forgive yourself for any misdeeds. Forgive all others. Set yourself free and prosper. I dare you. Peace and blessings. This is our moment of meditation Meditation is extremely important. It's almost like, sometimes like to define it as a mini retreat. You're actually retreating from the world and your daily doings to actually have a moment with yourself. And then you go back into the world with the spirit of the eternal in every step. Now, since I had the opportunity to speak about forgiveness, this particular meditative practice will be centered in on forgiveness. So I invite you to close the outer eyes, if you can, and center yourself into an awareness of anything at all to be grateful for. Doesn't matter how minimal you think it is or how magnificently big you think it is. Just find something to be grateful for a moment. And feel that sense of gratitude which is beginning to clean up your perceptual windows. Remember, all forgiveness is really self-forgiveness. Because we're letting go of the debris, the mental debris, the resentment, the rancor, the grudges that weigh us down and provide the condition for even debt to flow into our awareness, into our experience. First thing I want you to do is when I say the word forgiveness, whoever pops into your mind first, whether it's from many years ago or whether it's from something recent, whatever your soul has just given you, bring them into your awareness and see them sitting across from you. Notice any emotions that are coming up in your solar plexus and the rest of your body temple. And look at them and say to them right now, mentally, what you did does not determine my destiny. I'm not a victim to your act of omission or commission. What you did or did not do cannot affect my destiny. I cut the cord between us. See yourself cutting the cord mentally and say, I set you free to live out the true meaning of your destiny. As I cut myself free and live out the true meaning of my destiny, I have a great destiny. And what you did or did not do cannot hamper me any longer. I forgive and set us free. Be with that for a moment. Let's go to one more advanced stage of this. As you see them sitting there, say and feel, I wish you well. I wish you success. I wish you prosperity. I wish you well. I wish you success. I wish you prosperity. Feel it in your being. If that is difficult, think of someone in your life, maybe even an infant in your family. Think about how much you love them and say to that infant or that small child or someone in your family that you love, I wish you well. I wish you success. I wish you prosperity. Feel the feeling. Now shape-shift that feeling to the individual that you're now forgiving. I wish you well. I wish you success. I wish you prosperity. Feel the shape-shift taking place. You are freeing yourself from future debt, because you're not claiming that you're missing something because of their actions. Embrace yourself. And give yourself permission to be well, successful, healthy, and prosperous, even now. We give thanks, and we allow it to be so. And so it is. That's our moment of meditation for this particular segment. Keep up your practice, because it's not that practice makes perfect. It's the practice of perfection that makes perfect. And forgiveness is the practice of perfection. Peace and blessings. I appreciate your letters and emails that you've been sending in, but also the notes you're sending on the Instagram and on the website, thanking me for Take Back Your Mind. And I thank you for your support. As I've said before, if you want to support Take Back Your Mind, support the sponsors. The main sponsor is the Agape International Spiritual Center, agapelive.com. We have a Facebook presentation, an Instagram presentation, a YouTube presentation, and a website presentation. You can donate to the sponsor at agapelive.com. It's one way that you can donate. It supports the podcast. Second sponsor is Nutrarise.com. You go to Nutrarise.com, those three lines up at the top, you touch that line, and you'll get Adaptozen. Adaptozen are my products. The Super Green Superfood Greens and the vitamin D3 K2. Both extremely good for your health, your nutrition. You support the sponsors, you're supporting the podcast. Have a beautiful, and as I like to say, a bright day, luminous day, because you are a luminous being. Peace and blessings. Your time is very valuable, so I want to thank you for lending us your ear and participating in Taking Back Your Mind. If you want to submit a question for the question of the week, please submit it to podcast@michaelbeckwith.com. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please submit a review and let us know your thoughts. Stay on top of current episodes by subscribing to the podcast so that you'll receive alerts and not miss one single episode. And feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends and family. And until we meet again, take back your mind, and you will take back your life. Peace and blessings.